Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to DC Go-Go, 10 years backstage with author and photographer Chip Pye. I'm so excited about tonight's program, as I know so many of you are. It's a topic that's really, people are really passionate about go-go music, and we've all admired Chip for his wonderful photography, especially following Chuck Brown around all those years, and all his wonderful photography. Before we get started, I wanted to say a couple things about other programs we have coming up. As you know, Silver Spring Town Center is a nonprofit situated in the Silver Spring Civic Building, and we present over 125 free arts and cultural events year-round, mostly on Zoom. We are returning to live and in person, but for outdoor events in May, and we are planning our Silver Spring Blues Week in the middle of June. So be ready for some fun this summer with us. Some events we have coming up right away. We have on Monday, it's our 5th annual Women in the Arts panel discussion. Local women explore creativity, identity, and resilience, and that's hosted by blues artist Stacy Brooks with an array of women from the creative spectrum. That's this Monday at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And then a week after that, on April 4th, we have another round of Follow Your Bliss, how taking the road less traveled can lead to your best life. And we have a wide array of interesting local folks. Chip's going to be in our next one in a couple months. He's invited anyway. We have an array of folks who will share their stories. So it's always a fun time. During the month of April, we are celebrating Earth Day all month with an array of awesome programs as well. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, Montgomery College, and many others. And now let's get to the program you came to see. Chip Pye, he's a wonderful photographer, not just of go-go music, but of any kind of local happenings. I mean, you'll see Chip at events, and his photography is just awesome. And he's, in addition to that, he's just a great storyteller as well. So I think you're in for a treat. We're so happy to have you, Chip, talking about your new book.
Oh, yes.
Which I'm going to come by your yard to come and have you sign it.
All right. Cool.
And yeah, so, but I know folks can also buy it from you directly and get it autographed.
Exactly. I have autographed copies. Is there a way we can share a link in this?
Yes, I will get the link in the chat.
Okay.
And
okay.
Yeah.
So, pop it up there now. Yeah, you can purchase it from my website, www.chippie.com. I'm sorry, it's not chippie.com. I'm sorry. It's www.chippiephotographer.com.
Right.
Yeah, they wanted lots of money for chippie.com. I don't know why. Okay, so I'm looking out here and I see some people I know. I see Pam Stuckey. I see Jeff Krulik, who, Jeff, I was actually thinking about you today, thinking about just checking in with you and seeing what your latest projects are. Jeff, if you all don't know, is DC's, how do you describe Jeff? He's a filmmaker in Washington, DC, and he centers in on very much hyper local and cultural events. He gained worldwide fame and fortune with his short film that he made in the 80s called Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Oh, he's wanting me to move on. But the other, Jeff, you can talk if you want, Jeff. Oh, he's saying, oh, okay. Okay. Anyhow, one of his movies that's keen of local interest is did Led Zeppelin play here? I live up in Wheaton, you know, Led Zeppelin did their first American concert up here, and Jeff has all the information in his documentary. Chip Landis is here. Chip is my good buddy. I always run into him on the streets. Chip is a cyclist. He's a what do you call him? He's a bicycle courier in downtown DC, and he knows his way around DC like nobody else. And who else do I see in here? Oh, I see Jim Epstein. Jim and I are good friends. He can't stand me politically. And Steve Kiviat is here. Steve Kiviat is a writer who has been covering the DC music scene back to the days of the Unicorn Times and with the Washington City paper, and he wrote an article about Chuck Brown and his guitar and how it got into the Smithsonian for Smithsonian Magazine. Steve is somebody I always look to for questions and leadership and stuff like that. So that's who I know. If I know you and I didn't recognize you, sorry, I'll apologize to you later. But what we're here to talk about tonight is my experience in go-go, and I'm going to talk about go-go and what I learned. This book published, there's 281 of my images in here. I spent 10 years literally living in the scene, gonzo style, and that's a Hunter Thompson reference. And the DC Public Library acquired my collection of 2,000 images of go-go, which they have now have them archived and for historical reference purposes at the DC Library. And my work is also seen at the Chuck Brown Memorial Park. One of my photos is baked onto tile and assembled as a mosaic. It's one of 9 that wrap around the park. And there's a brand new exhibit at the DC Library, at the MLK Library downtown, about DC's striving for self-rule, and then there's also 2 cultures: the culture of punk, which started in DC, and you all want to debate me about that, but Bad Brains is from Southeast, and then there's also a section on go-go, and 4 of my images are featured there. So I'm going to zip into this PowerPoint presentation, and I can't see everybody. Do I want to see everybody? I don't know. Boom, 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 boom. Here it is, slideshow. Okay, does everybody see this full screen? Yep. Yep. Okay.
Oh, not yet.
Yeah, you haven't shared yet. You have to share and click on what you're sharing.
Gotcha. Oh, there's 3 questions in the chat. Whoa! Thank you, Pam. We have a very, very special guest here. Somebody I've never met. Hold on, proper utensils. I may have. John Buchanan is here. John, can you raise your hand? I don't think I've met him in go-go, but John Buchanan was one of the original soul searchers. There he is. Hey, thanks for coming here. I'm speechless that you're here. He's a go-go legend. The Soul Searchers were Chuck Brown's, I would call it his first band. Might not, you would know more than second band. Yeah. Yep. So cool. And check with me after the show. I want to hear what you feel about my accuracy. Okay. Okay. So, and there's also one thing about my book. It's called 10 Years Backstage. It is not the full history of go-go. I'm a photographer before I was an author, before I became an author, which was 6 weeks ago. And my plan was photographing the DC go-go scene. And so this book is focused on what happens in go-go as I saw it in the 10 years that I was in there. I understand there's another book being written by Alona Wartovsky about the history of go-go. And so I don't want anyone to think that this is the complete history. This is just what I saw in the 10 years from 2010 till 2020. Great. All right. Did I share yet? Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Oh, that actually works well. All right. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Covering your full screen. All right. Show of hands if anybody understands what this sign is and why it's significant. And you can unmute yourself.
It's on Pennsylvania Avenue, right? Coming into the city?
No, it's not.
Leaving?
No, but anyhow, all right, cool. So I don't see any hands. Do you see any hands, Lisa? Lisa?
No, people can just chime in, I guess, if that's easier, if they know what it is.
Yeah.
Is
All
it
right.
related to Disco Dan?
No, other than the fact that it's graffiti.
Okay.
But what this says right here, this is was it Kenilworth Avenue? I forget the street right now. I know it, but it is right entering DC. And it's entering DC in Northeast. And right on the sign, it says there's an I, love, and a B and a G. All right. And what that means is I love Big G. All right. Does anybody know who Big G is? Did anybody watch The Wire? How do I move this thing forward?
Anwan Glover.
What's that? Anwan Glover. Cool.
Slim Charles.
Slim Charles, exactly. And you want to tell us who he was while I figure out how to move this? Oh, here.
He was with the Backyard Band.
Cool. Yes, he is. He's the leader of the Backyard Band. He goes by several names: Big G, Genghis, the Ghetto Prince. But if you watch The Wire, he had a starring role on The Wire after season 3. He was Slim Charles, and he's worked on other projects, 12 Years a Slave, several other movies, and so, but every night he rocks the Backyard Band, and the Backyard Band holds down an audience of 500-600 people each night that they play, and they play 5 to 6 nights here in Washington, DC. And yeah. All right, so the next question is, who am I and how did I end up being Chuck Brown's photographer and shooting pictures of go-go? This is my father, Ray Pye, and this is at the National Press Club in 1991. And that's when he won his National Press Club Award. And that's me with him there. And he was a newspaper reporter. And he was an old school newspaper reporter who literally chased the news. And growing up, I bought a camera when I was 14 years old, and I started following him and going on his assignments. And we found ourselves living in Nags Head when I was a senior in high school, and he was a stringer for the local newspapers. He got paid $25 a story, 30 if it had a picture. And he came up with many stories just because that's how he had to feed the family. And we had police scanners in the house. And by the time I was a sophomore in college, I had been published in every single newspaper across the country, because he also was a stringer for the Associated Press and later UPI. And so he also wrote a lot of stories for Grit magazine, if you remember Grit. And so I had lots of photos in Grit. I moved here to DC. When I was in college, I started shooting bands. And when I was in junior high school here, we lived in North Bethesda, or what was North Bethesda. And I booked local bands into the gym for teen club. And we did about 20 shows a year. And so anyhow, that's when I just love live music. I don't sit around and listen to records. But yeah, I'm a live music freak. And my parents also took us to bluegrass festivals, which is an entirely other story. It's where we went wrong. So anyhow, yeah, I moved back up here after college, got a job at the Gazette newspapers in the advertising department, and I started shooting local bands again. And so these are some of, if you all know here's the Nighthawks. This was for an album cover shoot that never made it. And it was interesting too, because they showed up at sunrise and I was like, how am I going to get the Nighthawks to show up in the morning? Local jazz scene. I shot in all different genres of music that play around Washington, DC. And somewhere along the line, somebody had told me that DC's live music scene is second to New Orleans because of go-go music. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What's go-go? So this picture right here, I don't know if any of y'all know this. This is JP McDermott. He's since moved to California. He's a Silver Spring resident, but he has a band called Western Bop. And when Facebook popped up, I posted this photo up on my Facebook page of him that I shot at a Buddy Holly tribute. This was at the Surf Club in PG County, and famous club that's no longer there. And he took this and he put it on and he cropped it and he put purple over it and he changed all the color reproduction and he posted it on Facebook, and it really ticked me off why anybody would alter my work. And so I reached out to him, and we had a good phone conversation. But he said to me, "What are you doing now? If we can't take your photos and put them on Facebook like we want to?" And I didn't have a good answer for him, but I started to view my work as a collection and not for consumption and alteration. So I had to say to myself, what are you doing here? Why are you doing this project for years? And I came to the conclusion with myself that I wanted to create a collection of images that reflected the DC music scene as I saw it there. And when I started looking back at the work I had and how to complete this, I had the genres covered that I knew, and there was this thing called go-go. And all I knew about go-go was Chuck Brown, because he was, this is a screenshot, this is definitely not one of my photos, from the DC Lottery ad. And he was doing the DC Lottery ads, and they were catching my eye, and I was going, that's Chuck Brown. I want to photograph him. And so that's all I knew about go-go. And I know from doing interviews, which I've done a lot in the last year, and talking with media and doing this, a lot of people only think that go-go is Chuck Brown, that he's, and he created it, and you can read that in the first chapter in my book. But go-go is much, much broader than that. There have been hundreds, maybe even thousands of go-go bands who Rick Peel's about to be in the house. Rick Peel's in the house. Rick Peel is a good friend of mine. He is also a former bicycle courier. And I can't stand riding with Rick anywhere because He gives me 3 or 4 different directions on how to get everywhere. He knows this city like the back of his hands. You will never see him lost. So, hi, Rick. So there was Chuck in the lottery. And I started to think, how am I going to get next to Chuck? And I started looking around and I bought his CD, About the Business. And the first track on that CD has this in it. And I want you all to listen here. I have a couple of the quotes here. Oh, good. I can point to it with this. Let's see. Listen closely.
When I came in, Chuck was here, bro. This Chuck time. This Chuck time. You understand what I'm saying? This Chuck time, man. I can't see, like when they have a festival or something, if Chuck ain't playing, you ain't gonna get a whole lot of people to come. Especially people that follow Chuck, young people my age. I mean, when they play something about Chuck, it's like, hey, we're gonna see Chuck. If anybody else is on the joint, then yeah, okay, we're listening to them too. But then, hey, for people come to see Chuck. There's a place and a time for everything. There's always Chuck time when you eat. And one thing about this town right here, there's always been an underground in this city, man, that just won't sleep, right? It wakes people up, man. And a lot of people don't know about it, but there's an
The one thing about this town here is there's always been an underground in this city that just won't sleep. It wakes people up. A lot of people don't know about it. I was like, whoa, I don't know about it. There's an underground. I got to check that out.
town right here, like, if you know it, you're into it, right? A lot of people ain't know it, they can't get into it, but if you know it, you're into it, man. And it's
A lot of people know it, but if they're into it, you know it. I wrote this book for people who are into it and know it. And I also wrote this book for people who aren't into it and don't know it so that they can learn about it.
like, it's a beat that nobody else hears any place else. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody else hears any place else, man. But it's here, and it's live, and it's out.
It's a beat. Whoop. It's a beat that nobody else hears any place else. Nobody. And it's here and it's live. And then he says, and it's ours. And on my exploration of go-go, which I thought would last 6 weeks to get some pictures of Chuck, it turned into 10 years. What I'm going to emphasize in this presentation is the relationship with go-go and their fans, and the relationship of go-go culture in Washington, D.C. It is definitely something that not only the bands and fans are the bands are important, but the fans are too. And we'll get into why as we move through this. So I needed to get to Chuck, and I noticed I went into the barbecue battle, which Chuck Brown headlined for years, and I shot him from the audience. And then I noticed that his keyboard player, Sweet Cherie, had her own all-female go-go band, and they played at the La Fontaine Blue, which is a big catering house in not Greenbelt, but over that way on 450. And so one night I just went there with I had a Backstage lanyard with some things on it. I threw that around my neck, and I walked in there. There was a line all the way around the building, and I skipped the line, opened the doors. Go-go security looked at me. I felt like I was about 2 inches tall, and I said, I'm here to shoot the band. And they said, well, you have to talk to Martin about that. And I stood in a corner for a while, and all of a sudden Martin Cooper came out, who was a promoter, and he was promoting the the show at La Fontaine Bleu and other places. There were 3 bands that played the La Fontaine Bleu every Thursday night. They brought in about 16 to 2,000 people every Thursday night. And then the bands played somewhere Friday night, Saturday night, twice on Saturday. Well, some on Sunday nights, and Monday was rehearsal night, and Tuesday was rehearsal night, and then they hit back out Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. These bands played in this town, packing houses. No other genre does that regularly. This is a picture of Sweet Cherie playing. I think it was their Wednesday gig was a place called My Place that was out 202 in Mitchellville. And this is Sugar Bears. Anybody remember the 1989 #1 hit Debut? That was Sugar Bears band EU, Experience Unlimited. And there's an interesting story about how that happened. Marcus Miller had wrote that song, and Spike Lee wanted to have that song in the movie that he was making called School Days. And not only it was 1989, but he wanted to have a MTV like dance number with it. And he flew to DC with a camera over and with his own video camera, and he jumped in a cab and he asked the cab driver to take him to see a go-go band, and he got the right cab driver because he took him to see Rare Essence. And he walked in there with a camera over his shoulders, and in the mid to late 80s, that was something nobody had ever really seen before. We got cameras and video cameras in our pockets. We can't go into any venue and not see people videotaping. But Rare Essence's manager, who was a very stern lady under the name Ms. Mack, she threw him out. And he got into another cab and he said, take me to see another go-go band. And they ended up going to see Experience Unlimited. Sugar Bear was and his band EU ended up in the movie. They did a dance scene that ended up in rotation on MTV, but was a #1 song. He traveled the world with his band playing that song. And every night in Washington, DC, Sugar Bear gets in if his band isn't playing, he gets in his car and he goes to all of the go-go spots and gets on stage with the band and does a little 3-song medley, ending up with Debut. And in Debut, he brings the ladies up on the stage to dance with him. And one night I was very honored because I was on the corner of the stage at the Howard Theater, and Sugar Bear walked up to me and said, what do you think about that lady over there? Or what about over here? And he let me pick the ladies and bring them up onto stage. It's a moment I'll never forget. Oh, another Sugar Bear moment I'll never forget was at Chuck Brown Day. One of the, he was on stage there performing, and it's called Go-Go because it never stops. And Chuck Brown Day is sponsored by the DC Department of Parks. And all of a sudden, a park employee walks up with a toddler. And the toddler had gotten separated from his mom. And I was the only non-band member on stage. And I signaled to him with the closed fist, which is the sign to stop go-go, stop the band. And he stopped the band and got the mom back with her toddler. And then he was kind of like pacing back, he's a little frustrated because he doesn't stop in the middle of any of his performance. And then he goes, I know. And I know one thing about Sugar Bear is that Go-Go made him rich, but Sugar Bear is a serious rock and roll fan. Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, that's the music that's playing in his tape deck when he cruises the city. I said tape deck. but so what he said then on stage is like, I know what it is. And he pointed to his guitar player and he said, play it. And the guy went into this serious lick that was what was Ozzy Osbourne's band's name? Oh, you can't, I don't hear you. Black Sabbath. What's that?
Randy Rhoads was a hotshot guitar player, but that was in his solo band.
I don't. It was a Black Sabbath. I recognized it as a Black Sabbath lick, and it was sick, and it lasted like 3 minutes, and then Sugar Bear got on the mic and said, "BEAT, give me that beat," and it went right back into go-go. And I got to witness that sitting right there on the stage with him. Okay. This is him performing with Belladonna. And in this club, the air conditioning was broken. It was August and it was 105 degrees outside at night. So I got to be, so anyhow, I worked with Belladonna. I started showing my pictures around. And within about 6 to 8 weeks, I was talking to Chuck's manager about working with Chuck. And so this is one of the first shots. This is one of my favorite shots too. And I just released this photo in limited edition. It's a limited edition of 250. It comes in a 16 by 20 Giclée print, numbered and signed. And you can pick up a copy of that at Chip Pie Photographer, as well as this picture of Chuck. And the interesting, the beautiful thing about the time in which I arrived is that it ended up being the last year of Chuck's life. And in that period of time, he was nominated for a Grammy, had a street named after him. And on Labor Day of that year, which is 2011, he was honored by the Kennedy Center and performed with the National Symphony Orchestra on the West Lawn of the Capitol for the Labor Day concert that they always have there. Following his performance with the orchestra, his band played an hour-long set and 40,000 people in attendance. And I had been with Chuck all that week. His birthday party was the week before at the 930 Club, which is a famous show. Was always a huge party. He released an album, Chuck Brown Live at the 930 Club. I would highly, if you want to listen to Chuck Brown, I would highly recommend that. That shows the live music experience there, and you can experience it in that album. Rolling Stone always lists it as one of the top 100 live music albums. One of the things that Chuck was also always known for was that he took the time, not only did he create the sound, but, and Chuck says this often, he says in interviews that I wanted to create a sound for myself, and I created a sound for the city. And this is one of my favorite photos because he was performing at a DC statehood rally in 2011. Again, it was 100 degrees. And a kid crawled up on the stage, and Chuck took a few minutes to make eye contact and greet the young guy. And it shows how Chuck was always concerned about the next generation, all the generations of go-go bands, and it's in its 5th generation now. And Chuck has always been welcoming, and to those bands, he always gave them advice. And I just love this picture because he cared about the generation that came up behind him. Again, this is a photo that I shot of Chuck. He was happiest that week, the week of his birthday, and the week of being the weekend of being honored at the Capitol. This is another picture there. I had never seen him so ecstatic and about a show, but he truly was. I'm just checking my notes here. Okay. Okay. In the preface of my book, I write about an experience I had with Chuck in November of 2011, the week before Thanksgiving. He was on a tour, 4-day Funk Fest tour, opening up for Parliament Funkadelic, and there were 2 other bands on that bill with them, and I lived on the tour bus, and during that time, I sat up front with Chuck, simply because when I'm photographing and working with a person, I always tell people to be 11 feet away from their subject. And I don't really mean that in a distance. I mean that in being away from where they see you, so that they're not posing for you. And sometimes it works to pretend that you're invisible. You know, I'm not saying, hey, Chuck, do this, hey, Chuck, do that. I want to capture him being him and not him interacting with me. So I always say stay 11 feet. So during the time that I was working with Chuck, I actually had very few conversations with Chuck. And so I sat on the bus and had a great conversation with Chuck. And that's in the preface of my book. And I'll tell you that the end of it, the last paragraph, is that when the bus pulled into Hampton Coliseum, he said to me, he said, I want you to walk to the stage with me tonight. And I was like, okay. And so anyhow, as we unloaded all of the gear and the band and everything into the backstage area, the rooms are like suites, and there's a suite for each band. And as we were moving into the suite there, a woman came by from the venue, and she had my photo pass, and she said to me, she said, I have a photo pass, and I said, that's mine. And she went to hand it to me, and Chuck was just sitting in a chair nearby. And she said to me, but before she handed me the pass, she said, I want you to understand that that at Hampton Coliseum, you must remain in the pit. You're not allowed to shoot from anywhere else. And you can only, the pit is the spot right down in front of the stage. And she said, you're only allowed to be in there for the first 2 songs of the act. And then you must leave on your own. If security has to come and get you, she said, we will take your card and you will never shoot a show here at Hampton Coliseum again. And I said, oh, I said, well, you know, do you have a minute to show me before the show starts where that pit is, so that I can figure out angles and lighting before I go in there? Because I'm only in there. I said, I'm usually shoot the band during the entire show, and I usually shoot the band on stage with them. And she laughed and she said, oh, no. At Hampton Coliseum, the only people allowed on the stage are band members. And Chuck was sitting in this folding chair, just taking all that in. And he said, excuse me, ma'am, this is my Chuck voice. In my band, I have 3 drummers, 4 horn players, 2 beautiful women, and 1 photographer. She handed my pass and she says, have at it, man. So I'd often jokingly say that I'm a member of Chuck Brown's band. So anyhow, then later that night, when we walked to the stage, he and I walked together, and at the stage door was 6 steps up and it opened up to the back of the Hampton Coliseum, and you could see the audience going, "Wind me up, Chuck, wind me up, Chuck." And Chuck turned back on the top step and looked at me and said, "Kodak," because he often forgot my name. He said, "Do you know why you're here?" And I said, "No, Pops, I don't know why I'm here." And he said, "You are here because of my family, because of my family. Shoot. You are here because of my family and me and my legacy." And he stepped onto the stage, and my knees wilted, and I got myself together and went out on that stage and took some great pictures of him. And I carry that with me to this day, that I am carried by my work in go-go. I'm carrying his legacy forward. One of the things sorry, I have to go back and pimp my book. You can read about Chuck creating go-go in chapters 1 and 2, as well as him and an artist and his band in chapters 4 and 6, as well as my experience on the night he passed in chapter 7, and how the city mourned and honored Chuck in chapter 8. But what I want my readers of my book who do not know, I want them to learn this, okay? That Chuck Brown, there's much more to go-go. Chuck Brown is the godfather. We honor him. There is much more to go-go in Washington, D.C. than Chuck Brown. It is a huge, huge live music experience that happens in this town. And most white folks, like myself, knew nothing about it. There have been many, many, many bands, and I'm just listed them here. I'm certain everyone's heard of Rare Essence and the Junkyard Band, but has anybody heard of Reaction Band and All For You Band, Let It Flow Band, and Pump Blenders, and in honor to our distinguished guest here, Proper Utensils. Those bands perform in Washington, D.C. all the time. This is Greg Boyer. I don't know if it's interesting. I can't talk to you and hear back from you. But Greg Boyer is a trombone player. He's been Chuck's trombone player for years. But Greg Boyer, he grew up in Southern Maryland, and he joined the band Parliament Funkadelic when he was 17 years old, and toured the world as a member of that band for 18 to 20 years. As a matter of fact, as we speak, he's out on tour with them now, because even though George Clinton retired a couple years ago, he broke out right after pandemic limit lifted, if it has lifted, and is on his retirement tour across the world. And he asked Greg to come back out with him. But Greg also was in a band that got kind of famous because of their front singer, Prince. He was in Prince's band with Maceo Parker, and he also tours with Maceo Parker, as well as many, many other bands. Dr. John, he and Chuck's horn section, known as the Beltway Horns, are one of the most in-demand horn sessions, and they work in the studio quite a bit. Because Greg was in Parliament Funkadelic, he brings a little funk in his stage antics to the band. It's always interesting to see what Greg is going to do. Greg wrote the best part of my book is Greg Boyer's foreword that he wrote, and I'm so glad he did. And one of the things that he said in the book, you could read it. I've played for numerous crowds, damn near everywhere you can imagine. They dance, they sweat, sing, and all the things that make a live audience great. but there's something in the way that a DMV audience throws right back at you what you throw on them. It's always the feeling that not all of the band members are on the stage with you. They are also in front of you. They are participants of the music being played, not just listeners. What I want my readers of my book to learn, hold up. Oh, okay. Now what I want to, I got notes. Now what I want to talk to you about today is Go-Go's intimate relationship with the Go-Go fans and the role of the lead talker in the Go-Go band. This is what, there's plenty, you can learn Go-Go 101 about how Chuck created it and how the beat and the pocket and everything in the book. But the role of a lead talker is really important because it's called Go-Go because it never stops. And there's a percussive pocket that Chuck adapted, put together, that plays all the pocket. Once the music starts, the beats goes on all night long. And the back line of a go-go band usually consists of a drummer on a kit, all right, congas, because Chuck was in a band called Los Latinos in his early days, and he really enjoyed the Latin rhythms. And then there's kids who play buckets all around DC who fashion instruments out of the dump they grew up next to, and they carried them to the corners of DC, and they developed a 4/4 beat that is their own. And Chuck grabbed them and put them in the backline of his band. And he did this in response to discotheques, because at discotheques, they were playing songs back to back and merging them in with each other. And people didn't sit down, and it was killing live music. And so he wanted to create that one to another thing so that people didn't sit down. So that's what he did with the pocket. One of the other important things to do is that when I knew Chuck, he was 75 years old. And when he ran into a fan who was in their 50s or 40s, he would literally look at them and then he would say, "I remember that night you came to my show, you snuck out your window and your mama came to get you." He remembered stuff like that with everybody that he met. He was very well connected to the audience. And one of the things that a lead talker does in a go-go band is they relate to the audience. And when the band goes into if the audience is not grooving to the song that's currently playing and starts slowing down a bit, the lead talker will put the band away from that. We'll say, "Wait a minute, pull the band away from that song into the pocket," and then he will start calling out to the people in the audience. And it's not unusual. It's actually very common during the show to have people handing notes to the lead talker of the band for who's having a birthday, whose anniversary it is, what groups are in the house, neighborhood crews, etc., for the shout outs. And the important thing, the most important thing about Chuck Brown that I can think of with what he does to the city is that no matter who you were out on the streets or in your 9 to 5 or whatever you were doing, when you came into a go-go, you were somebody. And Chuck Brown addressed everybody as if they were somebody. And the notes that were passed to him, if you got a call out during a show, man, you were high on the hog. Go-go bands haven't been allowed historically to play in regular concert venues. They have developed a business system where a promoter rents a room. Oftentimes it can be in a fire hall, a catering house, but a lot of times they're in restaurants that the promoter comes and drops some cash on a restauranter, and after the restaurant does its business on Saturday night, Go-Go comes in, it sets up a stage in the corner, and boom, you know, hundreds of people roll in there and party their ass off until the wee hours of the morning. So Go-Go is played often without a stage, and it's right there eye to eye with the audience. And you have the lead talker talking back and forth with the audience, keeping them active, keeping them rolling, keeping this front thing going. Every Go-Go song has call and response to it, where the singers sing and then they toss the mic to the audience, who then may sing the chorus of the song, or there's back and forth chants. And so these are just this is a picture of Rare Essence performing at it was a place called Tradewinds, and it was a go-go venue for a good long time, but it was a big, huge Asian restaurant, but at night it was a go-go place. And yeah, there was no stage. You can see here that the performers performed straight eye to eye. The only thing that separated them was the monitors down here. And it was an exciting night at Tradewinds. I'll also tell you one thing about Tradewinds, of the experience at Tradewinds, was the first time I was there. D. Floyd, who at the time was a saxophone player and a member of Rare Essence, and he told me during the third set break that that I wasn't going to be able to move around like I had the other sets. I needed to find my own spot and stay in there, because he said at Tradewinds we do things a little bit differently during the third set. And I got myself a spot on top of one of the bass amps, so that I was looking down at where the band was, and right down the line where the monitors were. And the band came out, and the frontline singers staggered their microphones. And then the band opened up with a little medley called Where the Honeys Be At. And the band members' hands reached out across those monitors and pulled people into the stage area. And all of a sudden, a lot of tambourines and cowbells just ended up being involved there. And for the final set, the band and the audience became one. And that's the importance of go-go, is how well they relate to their audience. They're really in this together. This is Big G performing at a makeshift club, and again, they're face to face with the audience. And this guy's celebrating his birthday. He gets pulled up on stage to dance at the birthday. Here's Big G. More bands. This is Rare Essence again. This is a fan who just happened to, there was a stage at this event, and he jumped up on the side of the stage and kind of fell back into the audience, but he danced a bit and then fell back into the audience. And I was able to, because I had stage access, I was able to grab this shot. This is one of my limited edition releases. And this is Shorty Corleone, who's been in Rare Essence for a long, long time. And he is performing there at Tradewinds, as close to the fans as you see here. Okay, I'm hoping this works. All right, it works. Cool. I'm going to show you all a video right now to explain the lead talker. And this is Belladonna. And I shot this. I was right on the side stage, and I had too much lens. I had a 50mm lens. But you get right up close to the lead talker, and what she's gonna, I'm gonna show you an example of how she fires up the audience, but she also leads the band. She moves the band. the guitar player is Jenny Jam here, and the singer who's going to sing the song, her name is Blaze, and her last name is Co, so she refers to her as Co. But as the lead talker, Ms. Karras fires up the audience, she also directs the band to tease them into the next song, and she'll call Jenny Jam to begin playing the licks of the song, say, hold it, wait a minute, do some more back and forth with the audience, and then try it again, and then go, hold it, band goes back to pocket, more with the audience. She does this for a few minutes, and until she taps Co on the shoulder to go ahead and sing the whole song. This is what go-go is really about here, is how the musicians are able to change and switch on a dime based on what the lead talker is telling them and how the audience is perceiving them. The band is in that pocket. That's a very distinctive sound that we hear. That's the distinctive pocket of go-go. Did you hear how she said, come on, Jenny Jam with it? And Jenny Jam laid out the chords, the singers began the song, and then she said, hold it, putting everybody back into that pocket. And then Co goes ahead and sings the song until at one point the audience gets tired of singing the song. I'm sorry, tired of that song and that groove, and the lead talker will then sense that and put the band into the pocket and determine what song to go to next. There's not often a set list in go-go. It's the audience kind of creates the set list. I've seen situations where the band is playing one song and one of the and the entire audience starts singing another song that was a hit song for that singer, and the band move right to that pocket and then to the song that the audience wants to hear. Again, the audience is completely intertwined with the band and what's going on in the room. The guy who invented lead talking is this guy right here. This is Jazz Funk. If some of you all listen to WPFW, Jazz Funk is a DJ on there in the early morning on Saturdays. And he was a DJ at the time that his mother, Ms. Mack, was managing a band called and the band the young
Young Dynamos.
The Young Dynamos. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And they went on to become Rare Essence. And at the time, he was a disco DJ, and he was known for, while playing the songs, talking and engaging the audience while he was doing that. And he was 4 or 5, 6 years older than the members of the Young Dynamos, and they started to respect him as he gave them advice about this. And then he joined them and took on this role. And he's carried that role for a long time, for 45 years now, maybe even longer than that. And one of the things that he did with the band, remember?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hearing you.
I can't. What are you asking me?
You better. It's the volume seemed to go down from your end.
Ooh,
Not,
can you hear?
not for anyone else.
Sounds
Okay,
great.
it's because
Is it good now? Check 1, 2.
yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay, I leaned over to my right side. Maybe that was it. I'll try and stay. I'll sit up straight.
Yeah, because we don't want to miss anything.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Where was I? Okay, remember when I told you that what Chuck created was how important everybody was when they were at a go-go? He took it one step further, and he would bring a spotlight up with him on stage, and he would say, we're gonna turn on the spotlight now and put everybody on display. And he would point that spotlight out to fans in the audience and call out their name. And people really felt like you getting that shout out there really made people feel very much important, and for generations to come. Hold on, let me see right here. This is D. Floyd. And D. Floyd was also a member of Rare Essence, but he left and went on his own. Here he is. He was actually, after Chuck had passed, this was a Chuck Brown tribute at Merriweather Post Pavilion. And he has the mic in one hand, which he interacts with the audience, and he's signaling, turns his head from the audience and signals the band as to where they're going when they come out of the pocket. And the guy standing behind him is comedian Huggy Lowdown. And if you're familiar with Huggy Lowdown, he's mocking Donnell here and signaling back. This is in that video that I showed you. I was over lensed with my 50mm lens, and it was fixed, so I had to live with that. You didn't see how close the audience was to Ms. Karras and Belladonna, but this is a picture. One of the great things is photography wise is a lot of times I was on stage shooting, or on stage or at the corner of the stage shooting with with a 14mm lens. so I used a super wide lens. Concert photographers don't use that lens. And because of my intimacy with the bands and my placing of myself, I was able to get these shots encompassing the band and the fans together. This is Backyard Band with special guests. That's Chuck Brown's daughter, KK. Ms. Kim here. I'm not sure this guy's name, but this is a perfect moment when band and fans literally just become one and the groove continues. This is one of my favorite shots of Chuck, and it was at the 930 Club. It wasn't his birthday show, and he walked out on stage, and 930 Club, the stage is what, 3.5, 4 feet tall. But at this night, this was a benefit. He was on the bill with a number of other bands, and the barriers, those things that look like bike racks, were in place so that Chuck's audience then was another 4 feet from the stage. And this is Chuck walking out on stage and letting the stage folks know that they needed to move those barriers so that Chuck could be close to his people. Okay, I'm going to go back to like this photo, right? These two photos right here, and just say this is one of my main points. Experiencing go-go in these intimate settings is what I like to refer to as go-go in its authentic form. Seeing a go-go band perform without an audience connection is not the same thing. The energy is not there. If you go and see a go-go band, and a lot of this is changing right now, as go-go is now being recognized as the official sound of the city. Go-go bands are now getting access to playing venues that they didn't used to have. You can see a lot of them are being booked now into places like the City Winery, the Hamilton, the MGM Studios, the Kennedy Center, Strathmore Hall. Everybody wants to have a go-go band in there, but seeing a go-go band without the audience interaction, it kind of loses its authenticity there. The feeling isn't there, the room isn't there. Go-go is now in a fork in the road, because along with becoming the official music of Washington, D.C., comes with it the intentions of the DC government. Does anybody know what the number one industry in Washington, DC is? And I can't interact with you but anyhow, what's that?
Tourism?
Absolutely. Hey, you know this.
Oh, do I know because I attended your?
I know. She's seen it before. Yes, it's tourism. The federal government doesn't pay taxes to the DC government. And if you go downtown, you notice all those 8th grade classes that are there and people coming in. It is tourism, and the DC government wants go-go to become a tourist, what people come to Washington DC for. Very much like if you go to New Orleans, you go to hear New Orleans jazz, and right when you get off the plane, there's somebody there to tell you where to go see it. Your concierge in the hotels, nowhere to direct tourists to go see. It's like that in Austin. It's like that. You go to Kansas City to hear the blues. You go to Nashville to see country music, and they promote the music in the name of tourism. And so that's the plan. And it's the interesting thing is that because go-go has been looked down upon by the city, it has learned to exist and thrive for 50 years on its own, playing in its own venues, having their own promoter business model, selling their live CDs, their soundboard CDs as their records. they've done well. A cowbell player in Washington, D.C. can buy a house and raise a family. But right now, is go-go going to want to step aside from this and start playing in venues where they're not so intimate with the fans, that the fans are strangers? And what will that do to the music? What will that do to the energy? Go-go doesn't itself, because it exists within itself, can turn their back on that. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I talked to a band manager the other day, Malachi Johns, and he's booking a lot of these bands now in venues, city wine. What is it called? City Winery and the Fillmore. Now he's putting on shows there. He's advertising to reach new audiences, white people. And it's interesting to see where go-go goes in the next few years. We'll have to see. Please tip your waiters and your bartenders. Thank you. But I also have two other things to show you that are just kind of cool. In 2008, I noticed that there was this building right that you could see from the red line. It was a barn-like structure at the Fort Totten exit, and it was completely covered 100% in graffiti. And I decided on a Sunday afternoon with the sun coming in this direction that I was going to climb over the fence and go photograph this. And the only opening I found in the fence was about a mile down the road. And so I had to hike, and I was wearing the new shoe fashion at the time, Crocs. And if you've ever walked on a railroad track, you're walking on shaky rocks. And I started my hike down there. And when I got down there, I was about to go over the fence into the light. I think it was a Thomas Somerville plumbing supply company lot. And right as I climbed the fence, I looked down and I saw this huge dog food bowl with like 3 pieces of dry dog food in it. And I didn't go over the fence, but walking back, I saw this. It's a switch box on the Metro, and it said "Cool Disco Dan." And I was like, wow, cool. I didn't know, this was before my go-go time, but I remembered Cool Disco Dan in Washington, D.C. in the 80s when his name was everywhere. And anyhow, this box right now, Cool Disco Dan. Oh, Cool Disco Dan did what he did because he wanted to increase his presence at the Go-Go's. He wanted more call outs, and he was a shy young man who suffered from a bit of mental illness that he didn't interact well with people. But he became one of the most famous people in Washington, D.C. because he did this, and he did this so that he could get his names called out at the Go-Go's. There's most of DC's graffiti is rooted in go-go culture. There was a guy named Randy, and he wanted to be called out, so he adopted the name RE, Rare Essence Randy, and he created a tag that had the Rare Essence logo in it with Randy on it. There's Lisa of the World, who tagged all over the place. These folks were trying to get attention, and they did in go-go. Today, now that Cool Disco Dan passed in 2017, this switch box was replaced after his death, and it now hangs in the council building. This is just really cool, and I didn't notice it until I was doing some deep dive into my for the book and for the library, into my D&E roll, photos that I just shot, but they didn't mean anything, and so I never bothered to process them. But I ran into this young woman down in front on Georgia Avenue, the part of Georgia Avenue that is Chuck Brown Way, And this was probably 2 or 3 days after Chuck had passed. And she was taping these flyers onto poles along the street there. And the flyer said that she wanted the 212 BET Awards to do a big tribute for Chuck Brown, and she suggested the bands TCB, BYB, Backyard Band, RE, Rare Essence, CCB, Critical Condition Band, to be right on stage in front of millions. And she said, sign this petition right here. And anyhow, when I found this photo last summer, my teeth nearly fell out because at the 2019 BET Awards, what she asked for happened. A corporate jet came out here to DC and picked up all of the go-go greats. There's Sugar Bear, and did a go-go tribute right there at the BET Awards. And I should do better notes. I can't remember this actress's name at the moment, but she's from DC, and she made this happen. And the interesting thing is, it was completely what that young lady was asking for back in 2012. And that's in my book. I want to find her. And I want to get her in touch with this actress and take a picture of all of the participants with her together. And some folks in the media have mentioned they would help me find it. Does anybody remember this actress's name? I know it's the wrong way to look at her. Chime in. She was in a lot of the Scream movies. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Here's my book. It's for sale at my website. Do I have as well as my limited edition prints. And in the near future, in the near future, all the coolest of cool people will have these pictures on their living room walls and office walls, because it's part of DC history. All right, I guess I hit escape here. I go out of screen sharing.
Hey,
Okay, and we have, oh, I see people now.
yay, that was great, Chip. We have time now for some Q&A.
And first thing I want to ask is, I want to ask our prestigious guest, John,
Okay,
what I got wrong.
okay.
I won't comment on what you got wrong.
I want to know.
I want to focus on all the good stuff that you talked about, because I really appreciate your insight into this historic music that we have. I started playing with the Soul Searchers the day after I graduated from Notre Dame, which was May the 5th, 1971. Wow. And I was with
what was Chuck's first band?
Los Latinos.
Oh, okay, good.
Mm-hmm. So and it was already the Soul Searchers when I got with them. And I was there. I was actually on stage when Go-Go started.
Oh, with Ricky Wellman?
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
When it started, when the pocket started and the groove and everything. We were at the Burgundy Room in Hyattsville, about a mile from the La Fontainebleau, where you took those photographs. Prior to Go-Go, we had cabarets. You know about cabarets? People would dance and then sit down after the song, and maybe the DJ might talk to you. But once we had Go-Go, it didn't stop. And people got it confused with Go-Go Girls. That's a different. That was a whole different thing. But
I'm actually having a conversation with the person who handles events at the DC History Center, and she's new. She's from out of town, and she doesn't understand why we should be having this conversation at the DC History Center. So I have to try and politely educate her.
Also, there's another, for me, a major issue with getting go-go out to the public, because it's hard to replicate what happens in go-go on records.
Mhm.
You know, so Bustin' Loose is one of the first really go-go records that captured the atmosphere. We had a big crowd of people in the studio when we recorded it, and you know, since then, I mean, with videos, you can get an idea about what go-go really is, and you know, just like rock and roll evolved, go-go has evolved into several different flavors now.
Mhm.
You know, more recently, the pocket has evolved from one of the rare essence timbali grooves into the bounce beat.
Mhm.
And all the kids love the bounce beat, you know, because it's hyper, it's fast. You know, I'm old. I still play go-go, but I play old school.
Right, and it's interesting too, because I saw Chuck talk to people once, and they said that you know, the bounce beat wasn't go-go, and Chuck Brown said that it was. And that argument continues all the time.
It's
And
evolution.
I always go, I don't know, but Chuck said it. But one of the big movements is the Grown and Sexy by it's National Women's Month, and a big turn in go-go was when Maisha Rashad and her band, the Hip Huggers, started playing the go-go beat behind her R&B and soul covers from the 70s. And go-go had grown up then, because the age of the audience had grown up, and that's covered in my book. And then also for National Women's Club, we need to mention that, you know, Ms. Kim, before her, some of the bands had women on frontline singers, but when Ms. Kim became the frontline, she went to a party, and a birthday party for her friends. Rare Essence was playing. She got up on stage and sang "Happy Birthday," and they recruited her into the band. Since Miss Kim has done that, every band now has a female singer on the front line.
Pretty much. Mm-hmm.
So thank you, John. Do you have anything more to say? I'm so glad you're here.
Well, no, we can talk offline.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. You live in Silver Spring?
I'm in DC. I live in DC.
Okay.
I used to live in Wheaton, not far from you.
I'm in Wheaton. I want to invite you over to just sit on my front porch and talk. All right, cool. Does anybody else out there have a go-go story or a Chuck Brown story they'd like to share?
I do. How's everybody doing today? My name is Cliff. I'm out here in Tucson, Arizona, originally from Washington, D.C.
All right.
My brother is Go-Go Mike, that plays for EU.
Okay. Wow.
So when they used to play at the, what was the skating rink?
Crystal Skate.
Yeah, when they used to play at Crystal Skate, they were opening for Chuck. I was in the military and I had come home on leave. And I had never met Chuck in person. And when my brother introduced me to him and everything, it was like I've known him for years.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck was, and in my mind, it still is, an amazing guy. He not only created, but he started a go-go revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the number of go-go bands in the city now, but my biggest experiences were when I traveled with my brother in EU performing at Chuck Brown, you know,
Mhm.
concerts and everything. And I had a ball.
Mhm.
I had a ball. Chuck, he actually introduced me to, I don't know whether Janice was his niece or his granddaughter or whatever, but me and Janice had a short little relationship thanks to Chuck.
All right. All right. Did you get to ride in the limo?
No, I didn't. During the funeral,
Oh, I photographed that limo.
yeah, I was actually in Afghanistan during that time.
Well, it was interesting too, because at the funeral, they tried to get Chuck. So what we're talking about is that when in Chuck's early days, he had an old limousine. And before he was anybody, before his band was anybody, he would set his band up in the in a park in DC. One of the parks is now the Chuck Brown Park. And he would drive around in his limousine and just stop where people were standing on the corner and say, "My name's Chuck Brown. Get in the limousine and I will take you to my party." And he would literally take people to the park. And when he got 20, 30 of them at the park, he and his band started to play. And when you run into the really old heads, that story comes up.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to talk to my older brothers because that was during their time and everything.
Hmm.
I have three brothers that are DC police officers, so I know they know some stuff about that.
Yep. Cool. Thank you. Did I get anything? Tell me what I got wrong. I'm glad it's taking you a while to think.
I don't think you got anything wrong.
Okay.
I think you got everything right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. I had to learn this. I didn't grow it. It didn't grow out of me, but I had to learn it. So
You know, learning is best. You know, you're never too old to learn.
right. And now folks who don't know can pick this up off my website, chippiephotographer.com, and learn more about go-go. And for folks that do know, you can it's a documentary celebration of go-go and its culture. If you've been in the audience at go-go's in the last 10 years, you might be in here. So I see Ken. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, Clifford, thanks for sharing your memories. And also, do you get any go-go out west? I'm from San Diego, near Arizona, so originally, but I've lived in DC a long time.
Actually, I go on to Pandora. Pandora, and you just in the search, you just type in Chuck Brown, and not just Chuck Brown, but just about every go-go band in the city is on Pandora.
Great. Okay. Well, good. I think you can maybe see some shows in LA too, though, right? There's some go-go music there. Or is it only in DC?
It's not. Yeah, it doesn't travel that often. Go-go goes down to the Miami Takeover, which is a big African-American celebration in Miami,
Right.
as well as the CIAA tournament, which this year was in Baltimore, but it's been in Charlotte, North Carolina for years. Chuck used to always headline that. But no, go-go doesn't travel out that much.
Chip, there's a radio station in New Orleans that plays go-go. I met a DJ that plays go-go every week.
Cool. I've shipped a few books to New Orleans in the last 6 weeks. So yeah.
To answer your question, Chip, you were asking who the woman was on stage at the BET Awards.
I see that, and I didn't see this. Yeah, it was Regina Hall.
Yeah, and she's co-hosting the Oscars this Sunday with Wanda Sykes and Amy Schumer.
Yep.
Now we will get to Ken Roseman has a question or comment.
Yeah, that was an amazing presentation, Chip. I do have a Chuck Brown story, but the event you referred to, the first time I saw him was at the 930 Club, and it was that event for DC Space. And he didn't have his full band. He was only the guitar player. I knew that go-go existed. I'd never heard much of it. And, you know, being probably scared to go to the places it usually played. And he was a bloody good guitar player. And then I found out about the free event in front of the Capitol. What would you call that place? You know, the event with the National Symphony Orchestra and his band. At a part-time evening job at the time, I took off a night to go see that because I felt I would never get another really good opportunity. And I was absolutely blown away. The closest I could describe it would be like Sly and the Family Stone, you know, but it's not exactly that either. The horn section was unbelievable. He's a great, well, was a great guitar player. And I really enjoyed it. And that got me to buy this, if you can see it.
Ah,
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And it doesn't have any bio or anything with it. So you're gonna have to get your book. And then I actually met him. And yes, I dressed for the occasion. I was in my cheerleader drag. He was cool with it. He was gracious. I will never forget that. I am sorry that I only got to see him and his band once, but they were great. And it was, you know, the one thing I'm curious about, and you did touch on this, is what was it like to get so involved in this culture that obviously you hadn't grown up with? I mean, I got really involved in English folk rock, but theoretically that's not quite as far in for an aging Jewish hippie. I don't know. But how was it? I mean, you know.
well, I'll tell you, I can tell you exactly how I related to it. I'm a deadhead. And had I not been a deadhead, I would not have understood what was going on in the room. And I compare the scenes to each other all the time. When you go to a dead show, people are dressed up and they think that they're eating so much LSD they think they're the show, and so and it's also they're also jamming back and forth between guitar and guitar. The conversation in go-go is a percussive conversation. The conversation at the Grateful Dead, though it does have its, you know, drum solo time. Yeah, I don't think the two of those even compare, except that they're there. But yeah, the jam band scene that I understood allowed me to understand what was going there. And I thought that I would be able to get in and get this to me was just something that I had to do to complete something. And I thought that I would be in and out in about 4 to 6 weeks. And I stayed for 10 years. I got very much involved with it. I did not realize this, however, in hindsight, it makes absolute sense, is that the people in go-go were paying, everybody was paying attention to me, and I didn't know it because I don't look like them. And at these go-go's, there's literally 5 or 6 white folks, I could name them, who go to the go-go's. But I stood out, and there I was with the camera, and then next thing you know, I was on stage with Chuck Brown, and they were like, "Oh, you know, he's cool," you know. And I got lots of Facebook friends, and I made some friendships. Many of my friends that I have a Wednesday night Facebook Zoom that got me through this pandemic without killing myself, and it's people I met at the Go-Go's, you know. So yeah,
It's a real, I mean, your relationship with the go-go thing really parallels mine with the English folk rockers, except that they are physically further away.
Yeah.
But that you are able to develop these relationships is incredible. And when I saw the Chuck Brown band, I was just blown away. I don't care what kind of music you like, they are really good.
Yeah.
They are really good.
Three of Chuck Brown band members, Marcus, Greg Boyer, Sweet Cherie, and I thought there was a fourth, but I can't remember it right now, all have perfect pitch. Okay. They don't have to read music. They hear it and they just know it. They're all educated and do read music.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were like
but,
classically trained, any of them, particularly the horn section.
Greg Boyer was classically trained as a tuba player when he was like 5 to 6 years old. But Greg Boyer plays every instrument. What you holding up, John?
What is that? Oh, Chip, can I send you a Facebook friend request? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, will do.
This is Lloyd Pinchback's book.
Oh,
You ought to read it. It
Yep.
fills in a lot of gaps that you might be missing.
yeah.
Soul Searchers. This is his first 10 years in the Soul Searchers, 68 to 78.
Wow. When did that book come out?
About 4 years ago.
Cool. Well,
Where can you get that?
Well, self-published, so you might have to search for it.
Okay.
Soul Searchers, 1968. It's hard to see on my screen, at least.
but you can get my book at chippiephotographer.com.
Yeah.
And I have this pen waiting to sign.
Can help with this. JB can help with this answer. How did go-go get started? What are the roots of go-go music?
Very, very good question. And like I said, I was on stage when it happened. The horn players had jazz backgrounds and classical backgrounds, so we knew how to improvise. And we were actually playing Mr. Magic. And that beat, if you check out the song Mr. Magic.
That's by Grover Cleveland.
Yeah, and
Grover Washington, I'm sorry.
he used that beat, that same beat, as the go-go beat. So
That was the drummer Ricky Wellman.
well, no.
No?
This was before Ricky got in the band. We started playing. We started playing go-go before that.
Mhm.
Okay, and we went on tour. We went on Soul Train, and we're also in the African American History Museum as well.
Yep, sure is.
So
What year was that, JB?
I'd say probably 72. No, I'm sorry. 74, 75, 76. Around that time. 76, it was pretty much established. You know, you talked about crowds going around the building at the Burgundy Room right there at Ardmore Ardwick Road, 450, St. Mary's Catholic Church.
Yep.
Yeah, the crowd would be all the way around the block, you know. And yeah, we had go-go. We had a Monday night go-go, Tuesday night go-go, Wednesday night go during the summer, of course. Thursday night, Friday we had double gigs. Sometimes we get in at 7 o'clock in the morning because we played till 6. That was the Soul Searchers before it was Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, but Chuck was the band leader.
Wow.
Yeah, it's out here where I am in Tucson. I like to play my go-go loud when I get around these youngsters when they're playing their little, you know, I call it crappy music. And then they'll start asking me, what am I listening to? And then I tell them, they're like, I've never heard of it. I said, of course you haven't, because it's not out here. And then they asked me, well, what type of music is that? I said, it's a mixture of R&B, hip hop, reggae, and jazz.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Cliff, how did you find out about this?
Facebook.
Okay. Oh, did you see one of my postings in the Go-Go Report or something?
It popped up on my timeline.
Okay.
And when I saw it, I was like, I have to do this. Then I could tell my brother about it.
Right. Cool. My work will be featured. I'll be the featured photographer in next month's Rolling Stone magazine.
Okay.
It will show. There's 15 images from the book. And they asked to include Chuck, Go-Go Mickey, Big Tony, Sugar Bear, those folks in it. So I have 169 characters for each picture. So I wrote a little Go-Go 101 kind of thing about each picture. And they could cut it down. I don't know. I've set them 15 slides, and I've set 15 photos in a arranged slideshow with captions, and I haven't heard back from them yet. But yeah, I know it's going to be in there. I just don't know how much of it's going to be in there.
Yeah.
I think is very cool for Go-Go, and I sent them a copy. I sent the editor there a copy of my book, and he went to college. He went to Georgetown here in the 80s, and so he was familiar. And when the photo editor contacted me, I asked him if he had read the book, and he said no, the editor wouldn't give it to him. So cool. Anybody else have anything to say?
Here's where I get my I have to get my go-go fix every day. Alexa, play Chuck Brown Stormy Monday.
Now that's an interesting thing too, but that I mentioned in my book.
Searches on Amazon Music.
Is that, Chuck also discovered Eva Cassidy and recorded the first album with her, and it's all jazz standards. And does everybody knows Eva Cassidy after she died at a very young age, and the album that Chuck made with her was the only album that was released when she was alive. But she was very shy, and she stayed in the studio with Chuck and Chris Biondo. What do we got? Oh, Cliff is playing it. But yeah, she stayed in the studio and made tons of studio recordings that have been released since her passing, and selling in the millions and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a great album. It's called The Other Side, with Chuck Brown and Eva Cassidy, where they sing these jazz standards as duets.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a classic.
Yeah, is that on that album? That's what I was trying to.
Beautiful.
Yep.
So Chuck was a jazz artist earlier on.
Chuck learned how to play guitar while he was in Lorton prison, and he bought a guitar for cigarettes. Lorton was a reformatory prison, so they had a shop there where people learned their shop skills. And so he paid somebody in cigarettes to make him a guitar. And while he was serving his time, he learned to play the guitar with jazz standards. And so yeah. And then,
and blues.
Yeah, yes, and blues. And so yeah, that when he did this album with her, it was time for him to step back from the sound that he had created and go back to his roots with one of the best with what became the best singer in the world. So, did you ever meet Eva, John?
I never met her, but I was in the studio with Chris a lot. So yeah, and Chuck. So
yep.
Yeah, she was like that. I think Chris was her boyfriend.
Ah.
John, what would you tell us about Chuck's personality that we might not know just by watching him on stage?
Oh man, that's an airtight question right there. He was extremely charismatic, very driven, goal-centered, and business. It was all about the business. So
did he ever fire you?
Yeah,
How many times?
only once. That was
Only
all.
once?
That
Yeah.
was all. We actually fired him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's another story.
That's
Oh,
another
wow.
story. When Chuck used to, one of the things that Chuck did with his band was he brought into his band the young hot talent who were moving upwards, okay? And he kept them in his band until they started thinking that they were upward. They had arrived and they started getting slack and they started getting big heads on them. And then he would literally hire another musician who showed up that night of the gig. And he would say to the musician who he was going to fire, he would say, come here, he said, and this is my Chuck voice. He would say, I really like having you in my band. I really like looking over at you during your solo and seeing you giving it your best. He said, man, I like having you in my band, and that's why I'm gonna miss you. And oftentimes the new musician, Brad Clements, when he got into that band, Chuck brought him out to play next to the guy he was replacing for half the show. And then Chuck fired him at halfway through the show. That's why I'm gonna miss you. And this is Brad. And band members will tell you that they often got fired multiple times, you know.
Once was enough for me.
Yeah.
Did he ever fire you, Chip?
No.
No.
And my only experience with, like I said, I was not in his face by intention. I only had very few conversations with him. And they were basically on that bus ride because I wanted to get pictures of him interacting with the people around him and not the photographer. When I shoot political candidates, I do the exact same thing. You know, I'm there, but I don't want them to see me there. I don't want them, you know, and like I said, I actually pretend I'm invisible. So.
Right. Well, great. Well, so you documented his life through photography. Do you know if there was anyone?
I documented the last.
Go.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I documented the last year of Chuck Brown's life.
The last year of his life.
Yep.
Do you know of anyone who has documented, you know, his work and his life through film?
You know, in this age, everybody's making a documentary, and there were several times when I actually had a film crew come over to the house and interview me for a documentary, and they made me sign papers and blah, blah, blah. And I've never seen or heard from them again. And there have been times when I, you know, shared the stage with film crews who were making documentaries and never saw them. I know that Go-Go has had documentaries on TV1. Is that TV1? Yeah. TV1 has done several documentaries about Go-Go.
Chuck Brown and Go-Go on Unsung on TV1.
Unsung, that was it. Yep. So yeah, I remember they called me and offered me $5 each for each of my photos, and they wanted a lot of them, and I said no. So,
back in the 70s, Art Garfunkel did a movie about Go-Go. It was a horrible movie.
Yep.
And it's called Good to Go at first, and I think the name changed later on. I remember seeing it at the movie. There were like three people in the movie theater.
Right.
It was
Right.
pretty
That
bad.
was the guy from Island Records, Chris, what's his name? He was the producer of that, and Art Garfunkel was the star. And they started focusing on go-go bands, but in the 3-year process they made the movie, they turned around and started focusing on on the other thing that was happening in DC in the late 80s was the street violence.
Yeah.
And
Is that Chris Blackwell from Island?
yes.
Uh-huh.
And the illicit drug scene.
Yes.
It was a bad movie. Sorry about that.
And I can tell you one thing, of the time that I spent backstage, I didn't see most of the I didn't see drugs. It wasn't that at all. Well, if you think of the rock and roll backstage area would be, you know, most of the go-go folks who I know didn't even drink because, you know, well, Sugar Bear for one thing, you know, during the day, he's for 28 years, he has been a special ed teacher at the Fairfax Public Schools. And so, you know, he goes out every night and rocks the stage and then goes to work. Donnell Floyd, D. Floyd, you know, is a lineman supervisor for Verizon. Wendy Ray from Belladonna, she's a Montgomery County firefighter. You know, all these people work really hard, you know, and unless you're a backyard band, then, you know, there's just like a cloud of weed that travels with the backyard band. So.
Yeah, I was a music teacher and a science teacher in DCPS for 35 years.
Yeah. You were gigging about your business. You know, that was. Yep.
Okay, doc, I gotta run. Take care, everybody.
Cool.
Thanks, Chip.
Thanks for
Thank
coming,
you.
John.
Thanks, Pam, for turning me on. Appreciate it. Big time.
Yeah, thanks, Pam.
Yeah, thanks for being here, John. Nice to see
Yeah,
you.
thank you for coming. Well, thank you so much, Chip. This has been a fantastic discussion. And
Well, I got to thank Jeff Krulik because
oh yeah, let's call Jeff up here. He just shared
he's been sharing all the stuff that in the chat area here. And while I was doing this, I couldn't see the chat area there, but yeah, he also had that.
I shared that picture.
Yeah,
from,
that picture.
the Wilson Building,
Yes.
and also I found the documentary on Chuck.
I
That,
saw that.
well, I put the link. That's the one thing I thought was always neat about. I mean, it was just around here. It was just one word. You just had to say Chuck, and everybody
Exactly.
knew it was Chuck Brown.
Exactly.
You know.
I took a great picture of Chuck Brown's son Wiley and Chuck Levin's grandson. Is it Eric? Anyhow, I ran into them at the Funk Parade, and I took a picture of them and I put it on Facebook, and I said, you know, in this town there's two Chucks, and
Right.
and you just have to say Chuck, and everybody knows interchangeably which one you're talking about. You know, you can say
Usually Chuck Levins is always two. It's always just Chuck Levins. Always the two names. I mean, I know what you mean. You know, you're not.
If you
right.
if you say I'm going to see Chuck, everyone knows you're going to see Chuck perform. If you say, I'm going to see Chuck Saturday, you're going to see Chuck Saturday. But you can also say I'm going to see Chuck Saturday, and everyone will also know, what are you getting? You getting a new guitar? You know? And I put that with that notation on my Facebook page and got hundreds. It traveled all over the place. So, and I also mentioned it in my book. So,
Ken, I remember you at that down on Capitol Hill at the Capitol.
you were there with my sister.
Yeah, well, I think absolutely yes. Stacy, John, but Ken was there in his cheerleader.
No,
outfit.
not that.
No.
Because,
Oh, wait! You were in your Boy Scout outfit.
no, don't have one of those. I was probably like
Girl Scout
this.
outfit.
You were in your civilian outfit.
Yes, civilian.
Okay.
Bernie, maybe. Fairport Convention. I don't know. But I didn't know what the crowd was going to be like. I didn't know anything. I thought if I was going to meet somebody, I probably should just be, you know, like this. And, but I did meet Chuck Brown at some small Grammy party at a small venue at K Street and 15th or something. I mean, this is way before the pandemic, so I don't remember how long ago it was. And
Oh,
I will
God,
just
years ago.
remember how gracious he was, a nice guy we'd never met before. And, you know, I'm sorry I'll never get to see him again. And I did have, yes, the cheerleader outfit on, and he was cool with it, you know.
That's
So
very.
was Representative John Lewis when I met him anyway. But yeah, the music, the band, they were great. I'm really glad I got to see him before he passed, and a really good guitar player. And yeah, the way I can relate to this is through like Sly and the Family Stone and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Early Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
I have about, on my YouTube side, I have about 10 minutes from that show of video.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I remember
And the
seeing you on
Ken-
stage. there.
What's that?
I remember you on stage there.
Yeah, that the Kennedy Center was really uptight. They were afraid of what that you know, some black people would show up there, and they fenced off from the stage back to where the audience was literally like 50 yards. There was just this big field there in front of there where and they were real tight about giving press passes, and they wouldn't give me one. And I had shot him the Sunday night at the 930 Club. I had ridden around town with him and Mayor Barry for 2 nights. Chuck was just so excited that he was walking into any club that had an act that he knew and doing walk-on appearances with them. It was me, Mary Barry, Chuck, and Chuck's manager. And Chuck's manager was texting the clubs, who you got there? Chuck's interested in. And then Chuck would like park his Mercedes on the sidewalk in front of the club, and they go, you can't. And then they go, oh, hey, Chuck. Hey, Mayor Barry. And then I get out of the back seat and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm with them. Okay. And but Chuck's manager kept calling me and saying, call her back. You have to get a press pass to get on there. And I said, well, I don't represent me. And he told the other photographer, John Shore, had told them that he worked for the Washington Post and got his press pass. And Tom called me and said, call him up and tell him you're with the Washington Post. And I was working for the Gazette at the time, which was owned by the Post. And I was like, I'll lose my job for that. And so anyhow, I eventually, Chuck called me about the day before the show. He was trying to encourage me to do something to get there. And I said, Chuck, you know, shit flows downhill. I said, everybody has a boss, and that lady has a boss too. And I said, why don't you call Eleanor Holmes Norton? Okay. Because they had cut down his guest list to like 10 people. And it's normally like 35. And because his whole family was there. I said, call Eleanor Holmes Norton and say, you know, this is the most important day of my life and my family can't be there. And my photographer can't be there. And like within hours, I had a press pass and he had a trailer.
That's funny. Wow.
Yeah.
How did the pandemic affect all these live go-go shows? Because it seems to be such a live oriented scene and they're really close together, the people at the venues. So is it still going? Are they?
Let me just say this, okay? I don't want to get anybody in trouble here.
Okay.
Okay. But it's called go-go because go-go never stops. Okay. And so yeah, it didn't stop, you know, and so some places got busted and they moved along. So
Are you still going?
no, I don't. Well, no, I live like Howard Hughes since this pandemic thing. But I actually stopped shooting go-go bands like in 2015, but I still covered the events of Don't Mute DC. And I did spend an evening on stage with the band then. I don't shoot bands anymore, so for numerous reasons.
How many pictures did you say the library acquired? Or
We culled it down to 2,000.
wow. Huh.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and that each one of them had to be captioned and tagged, and that alone was about 6 months worth of work. But I asked them to pay me more for it, and they said yes. So
So
which
are
Great.
peop- Are
Hmm?
people allowed to use your photos that the library has? Like,
for personal use, they're available in low res for personal use. If you want to use them for you can't use them for commercial use.
right, but like for a student project or something.
That's what they're there for. Yep.
Okay, great.
If you want to use them, like for instance, authors and stuff like that, authors have to reach out to the library, and the library holds the copyright, except I own the copyright for specific things like the limited edition prints and the books and my portfolio purposes. But the library wants people to pay for them if they're for commercial use. But they also don't have a mechanism for completing that transaction. So
Oh, okay.
so,
They could also contact you, I guess, for permission to use or to, pay you for use. If
I can't sell them for copyright. They own the copyrights. I sold them.
Oh, they own the copyrights
The
now.
reason I sold them the copyrights is because I was sick and tired. This is one of the reasons I don't shoot musicians. I was sick and tired of trying to protect my copyright in this world. Okay. And yeah, I take medication because of how low I felt when my shit appeared everywhere in this town on sides of buses and stuff like that. And I wasn't getting compensated for it. It's not a great world for photographers or any creatives right now.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Things can get copied so easily, and they do. So.
Yep. Everything is free now. They figured it out.
So, are you planning to write another book?
I don't think so.
I think you could do one on something about local history in general.
Yeah, but I also don't have the funds to do that.
Oh, okay.
Did
you get help with funding to do this book?
No, not at all. I was on unemployment for a year. Let's just say that.
So yeah. And it took, how long did it take you to complete? About a year. Oh, great. Well, I've been enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to just do that. I'm also unemployed all the time. So there's no use for a newspaper advertising salesman anymore. So moving into the next economy.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Well, I know your work's been greatly appreciated, documenting go-go music and the scene, and it's really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to getting deeper into the book.
So how do we get the signed copy? Just
my website. You can order it from my website, and I ship it right out of here. Print a label and pack it, and sign it, pack it, and ship it.
Photographer.com.
For the last 6 weeks, after in the evening I become pack and ship Chip.
Well, you were also at Veterans Plaza, weren't you, the other day, set up? I saw a picture.
Yep.
Are you doing any other live? Just showing up anywhere?
I will be at City State Brewery next Tuesday night. You can come down. City State Brewery also brews the Big G. Remember I talked about Big G from the Backyard Band? He has his own label of beer that's made there. So you can have a couple brews and see this same presentation and save your money on shipping.
But are you doing more stuff like in Silver Spring, or was that just a one-off when you were set up?
I plan to do as many as I can. I don't have anything on the calendar for April yet, and I'm working on doing that. Yes, I will be. And if you pay attention to my Facebook page, you'll see them. So I actually feel sorry for my Facebook friends, because all I've been doing is pimping this book on my.
You got to do that.
You know,
Yes.
so yeah, I had a
Got to
couple
do it.
musicians, yell at me because I added a comment to their thing, and anyhow, I put a link in the comment of a well-known guitar player's thing, and he yeah, musicians. So are we wrapped up?
Yeah, was
That's
Jeff
wonderful.
going to say something else?
No,
Were you
no,
about
no.
to
I
say
just was
something?
going to let it. I mean, obviously, I just
Well,
wanted
hold
to
on.
know if Chip was doing any other appearances. But I
Yeah,
mean, it's you know, there's. You
I
know,
plan to do them throughout the summer, you know, and I have a list of, I have a bunch in the works. A lot of people are holding off. As a matter of fact, you know, this is the first one that we've done virtual.
Is that right? Really?
Yep. And when I
Wow.
talked to Lisa, you know, Lisa was at the stage that she was saying, well, we're only doing virtual. I don't know if you're doing live yet or when you move to that.
We're going to live in person outdoor in May, early May.
Right, right.
So we're not doing any in-person indoor yet, but you know, we kind of follow the county, what the county is doing.
Right.
The civic building is being used as a vaccination and testing site still during the week.
Oh, wow.
Although it is rented out for some smaller events, family things, and you know, small activities. I think on weekends, maybe some weddings, funerals, those types of things.
Jeff,
It's
Jeff,
great
a month ago, I did Politics and Prose,
Mhm.
and that was their first live event in 2 years. And looking at their YouTube page, I haven't. The YouTube pages that they're posting now are most of them are still virtual. I haven't seen another live one there, and it was interesting too because the tech people were completely had to learn their little equipment. You know?
Oh,
You know, they were a little rusty on getting my PowerPoint set up.
Wow.
And their
That was
their video camera they didn't charge the battery for it.
Oh.
So we used mine. And they still haven't posted anything.
Well, I love live events, of course, in-person events, but I think you can see the photography better on your own computer screen than on a big projector.
I appreciate you mentioning that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to see. It was fun seeing you in person. And
hold on 1 second. There's another local musician guy in this room who hasn't said a damn thing. We have Jim Epstein here, who was Jim. Jim.
I'm here.
All right. Tell us the famous guy you managed.
Well, as Jeff probably knows and remembers and can tell, he has told many great stories about a little guy. Funny name, Foster McKenzie III. Some of you may have known back in the day, also known as Root Boy Slim. I see Ken shaking his head. And Slim, actually the world of go-go and Slim collided a little bit here and there.
I was just going to ask you that. Tell us.
Yeah, one of the stories was, and Jeff, I don't know if you were there, right when Strathmore Hall opened up, the first electronic show that they had was the Whammies. Whammies.
I was with Mark Noon that night.
Right, Mark was there too. And
No, he was playing a gig in Northern Virginia.
Well, Root Boy was posthumously added to the Hall of Fame, the Whammy Hall of Fame, and was inducted that night. And I think we had EU there, and because they were also being inducted. And so it was, you know, back in the green room with some great times and some great stories between all of the go-go guys and Root Boy and the musicians. And some of the musicians had crossed over and played with each other. I know later on, Toro Gamble was one of Chuck's drummers for a while, and he was a drummer with one of the iterations of Root Boys bands back in the day. And I'm sure Jeff has a lot of different stories. And I know
I
that
get well, there's the
documentary and
you're
stuff.
much more plugged in. You were right on the front lines, Jim. You were right there.
Yeah, I have to say I was way overqualified when I first started out. I had a van. So I started out as the roadie and schlepper because Mark Greenhouse, who ran Track Studio over there in Silver Spring, he was a friend of mine, and Slim was looking for, they were changing bands from the Sex Change Band to Crying Out Loud with Ron Holloway. Probably people know him, who's an incredible sax player, was with Dizzy Gillespie and Gil Scott Heron and Root Boy, and plays with everybody and his brother now and has a great band. And Stuart Smith was a guitar player back in the day, and he's now with the Eagles and writes most of Don Henley's new music. And Tommy Lepson and all of those different guys were working together, and they needed a guy who had a band. And that's how I started out.
Wow.
And after about, I don't know, I ended up working with Slim from the late 70s to the mid 80s, and ended up being the tour manager, the booking agent. He lived with me in my house in Adams Morgan for years. We used to use the van for the Caribbean Festival in Malcolm X Park all the time. And, you know, we did all those gigs. So there was some cross, but Slim's gigs were crazy, certainly, in a completely different way, and had completely different kind of audience participation than the go-go bands did. And of course, I lived in Adams Morgan for years, and that's where the Junkyard Band, and you were talking about the kids with, you know, playing the trash cans and all of that kind of stuff back in the 70s when I first moved into town. That they were all playing out on the streets there in Adams Morgan, and that's kind of where it all started. But that's a whole nother set of stories that either
that's your book, Jim. That's your book.
Piece your ears, or Dick with the Root Boy. We'll put something
Well,
together.
if the Root Boy film ever gets done, you know, it's like first, like Chip, you mentioned all the documentaries. There's so many of them. There's and there are probably the go-go, like there's people that started go-go projects, go-go documentaries, and they're just sitting on the shelf or waiting for that burst of inspiration. It's all self-funded, self-motivated.
I guess maybe if Jay really gets feast your ears out about HFS, then Dick can really start focusing on
right. Well, the other guy, they are working on they have a rough cut. I mean, I'm kind of helping and pitching in where I can. At least this is the artist, Root Boy Slim, who was a real fixture. Much like you could, you know, like Chuck was a one name, you know, Root was a one name. Back in the 70s, he passed in 93, but he still had a dominant name. He was still known, even though his heyday might have been, I don't know, really.
Y'all might, if you don't know Root, you might know one of his songs, Christmas at Kmart.
Right.
That's actually how he got the gig in the first album was so Josh Brooks and John Hall and those guys. Josh Brooks actually went to Bard College, and he was friends with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker and Steely Dan. And when the Christmas at Kmart single came out, he played it for Steely Dan, actually for Gary Katz, the manager of them. And he fell in love with him and got him a Warner Brothers album. And that's how that whole thing got started. That's how Root Boy and the Sex Change Band, and then Mr. Mike's Mondo video that they did with Saturday Night Live.
Right.
You may have heard of, and A Beautiful Love Ballad with Inflatable Doll, or Mrs. Paul, don't you do me like Sarah Lee. She's a no good woman. She ran off with Chef Boyardee.
I have to give Jim a lot of leeway to speak on this Zoom call, because Jim is the president of the Wheaton Urban District Committee, and he always gives me plenty, some say too much leeway to speak at meetings. So I appreciate you, Jim. Jim, you got to come over here and check out my artwork in the backyard.
Hang out in the garden, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate it, and you did a great job with your presentation tonight, Chip. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Anybody
thanks.
got any more questions, shout outs?
It was really
Community-
good. Chip, thanks for doing this. Looking
Community
forward to reading the
concerns? Are
book.
there any community concerns out there?
Community concerns? I'm
Tom-
thinking about doing books myself, but man, I don't know how that's gonna work.
Tom Hucker registered to come here, but he didn't show up.
Mm.
My psychiatrist told me after my little 30-minute session today to stay away from politics because it's getting me too upset, and it is.
You're calmer than you were about a year and a half ago, Ken. You
What?
seem a lot calmer than you used to be.
I'm watching and listening to much less news because
Yeah.
most of it is horrible. I'm
Right.
just as radical as I ever was. I have no optimism, but at least I can get through the day, you know, and the news is horrible, you know. It's
Now you'll live longer.
yeah. Who said that?
Me, John.
Oh,
Yeah, Mr. Epstein. I don't know if I've ever met you before, but it's
Yes.
a couple of times.
Before
um,
this diverts, I just want to thank Chip. I want to end our video or recording and we can keep chatting a little more, but thank you so
I
much,
gotta go
Chip.
too. Yeah.
We
Get
should
his
all
book,
virtually
Chip
meet down at
Pye.
the quarry house. See y'all
Bye,
later.
everybody. Bye,
Photographer.com.
bye, Jim. Bye, Chip.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeff. I was
Bye,
thinking about
bye,
you today.
Lisa.
I mean, I'm pretty much